Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
I want to kick off today with an email I had from Chris Piper. Now, Chris is a long-time listener and supporter of the programmes. He said, Richie, I recently came across a documentary made by Al Jazeera called Secret of the Seven Sisters on YouTube. It's over 3 hours long, but it goes into all the origins of big oil influence. Thanks for that, Chris. Secret of the Seven Sisters, Al Jazeera on YouTube. Now, the reason Chris sent me that, he was listening with great interest to Jim Fetzer and myself talking about the Iranian coup when Mohammad Mossadegh was ousted by BP at the behest of BP by the US and UK government. So great stuff. Thank you for that link, Chris, for that information. I must tweet that documentary out now in the next half an hour or so before I forget to do it. Now, today, again, for the third time in 6 months, our mainstream media gave extensive coverage to the calls for a mandatory meningitis B vaccine for every child under 5 in the UK. Right across British media today, stories were covered about why the meningitis B vaccine must be given to every child under 5. Here is Sky News covering this story today. This is just a flavour of what's been said today.
Now, the family of a little girl who died from meningitis have accused the government of being complacent about raising awareness of the disease. The NHS currently only provides the vaccine for babies, but campaigners say it should be extended to all children up to 5 years old. Sky's Mike McCarthy reports.
And it looked like she was starting with chicken pox, because obviously they were going round at the time.
At work.
We went to bed. At 2:15 she woke us up asking for a drink. I saw her plastered in this rash, and I just screamed to Matt, she's got meningitis, we need to go to hospital as quick as we can.
For the want of a meningitis B vaccine, Mia would almost certainly have been alive today. But like thousands of other preschool children, she didn't qualify. When meningitis struck, Mia's local hospital in Barnsley struggled to save her.
And I heard doctors say, obviously they were working on it, and said, are we all in agreement to stop? You can see it all happening, but it don't feel real. It's like something that you see on telly.
The charity Meningitis Now says the report, due out last year, has now been delayed until at least autumn of this year. It accuses the health department of breaking its promise.
We know the vaccine is safe, we know it's effective, and we want the vaccine introduced to the under 5s as soon as possible. It will have a dramatic effect on the number of cases.
Now, nothing I'm about to say here or ever is in any way to be reflected on the parents of that young baby, because nobody, unless they've been through it, would understand what they're going through. So nothing I say is in any way critical of the parents. Good luck to them, and God love them going through that. But I've been researching again today. I joke, I jest. I've been researching. I love a bit of research, me. Most presenters can't stand research. That's the truth. They let their producers do it. I'm all by myself, as the great Eric Carmen song goes, so I have to like research whether I like it or not. So let me tell you a little story then. Gather round. So looking at this today, I found out there are roughly 4.5 million children aged under 5 in the UK. That's a lot, isn't it? But it's true. 4.5 million children aged 5 and under. Now, around 700,000 children are born each year, roughly. In the last census, which I think was taken in 2014, it was like 695,000 babies born. So we'll say 700,000 to round it up. 4.5 million children under 5. Now, according to statistics released in 2015, about 1,870 people, that's men, women and children, contract meningitis B each year, and 1 in 10 of those dies. Okay? So 1 in 10 is around about 187 deaths a year from meningitis. Now, again, these are not all children. So how many children then? Well, at the moment, around 40 children a year die from meningitis B. Some people say 50, some people say 60. Let's say it's 60 then, to go along with some of the vaccine campaigners. Let's just say it's 60. I'll tell you what, let's say it's 40. Let's say it's 40. The mean figure, the average figure given is 40. So let's say 40, right? So that's 40 children out of 4.5 million. But every child in the country should be vaccinated according to the campaigners. Every single one of them. Now, if you want a percentage, because we like percentages, don't we? There is a percentage that exists that computes your odds of getting killed in a plane crash. It's astronomical. Let me tell you how astronomical it is that as a child you have a chance of catching meningitis B. Let's talk about the percentage of children who die from meningitis B. It's 0.000888888%. That's what it is. If you're a child born in the UK today, your chances of dying from meningitis B is, and I swear, 0.00088888888. The 8s go on forever. % of dying. That's amazing. It's like less than 0.003%. But let's vaccinate them all, cry the campaigners. Now, I could spend time telling you why there is a massive campaign to vaccinate people for a disease that is really having little or no impact whatsoever on the lives of children. I could talk to you about the overwhelming toxification, the overwhelming stupidity of destroying a child's immune system with a dozen vaccines before the child is 3 or 4. But I won't do that because we've done it so many times on the programme. But trust me when I tell you, a child born today has a 0.000888888 so on % chance of dying from meningitis B. And yet, every 3 months, the news channels have presented us with a tragic family. I have no criticism for these people whatsoever. God love them. But they are dragged in front of the cameras to tell a story about a child who was injured by meningitis B or who died from it. Therefore, we must vaccinate them all. It's insane. Leaving that alone, we might pick this up later on in the week with Christina England. Now, my mate Phil came over today. My mate Phil, don't have many mates. Phil is one of my mates. Phil came over. Now, Phil knows that we talk about the benefit system on this programme regularly. We often talk about assessments and how people are being taken off benefits and denied help for no good reason. Now, for our listeners overseas, you have to believe us when we tell you this is happening to people with disabilities on a massive scale. It really is. Taken off benefits for no good reason. Now, Phil, my mate, asked me if I'd heard a nurse on television. In fact, she was on Granada television here in the northwest last week. I said I didn't. Well, Phil said the nurse admitted that the assessment hearings, which sick and disabled people must attend, are fixed. The assessors are looking for reasons to suspend payments, and they have targets. Now, we know this, but I didn't realise that a nurse who takes part in the assessments has gone public on it. I hadn't seen the programme, as I said, but I got it online. Have a listen to this. The nurse had 20 years' experience on hospital wards and in surgeries, and she trained with Maximus to carry out work capability assessments. Now, Maximus is the company currently employed by the Department for Work and Pensions to assess people's capability to work. Listen to the nurse. Granada Television changed her voice. In fact, they used an actress to voice what she told them. This might shock some people. Most of you, sadly, will be pretty familiar with it.
I went into nursing because I care for people. But as far as I can see from the training I did, the whole culture is to try and trick the patients and trying to get out of paying them benefits. We were also told if someone was paraplegic, if they had the use of one arm, that basically they were fit to go to a job club. By getting them to a job club, they're cutting their benefits.
And that's taken away their support.
Exactly. They're trying to catch them from the minute they walk through the doors.
And you didn't feel, even though you were a nurse doing this training, that you could say, this is wrong?
No. Basically, you are terrified of saying anything. It may affect your nursing registration.
You're terrified of saying anything because it might affect your nursing registration, she said. Did you hear that? Men and women who haven't got a pot to piss in. Men and women whom are deserving of whatever help they can get from the state are going blind into these PIP assessments, these work compatibility assessments, unaware of the fact that the company given the job by the government to carry out the assessments have already determined before they come in the door that they're going to be defaulted, or their benefits are going to be withdrawn, or they are going to be reduced. What sort of country does that? What sort of people can go to work in the morning and then go home and spend time with their husband or their wives or their children and forget that day they told a guy in a wheelchair that if he didn't turn up to some job that we found for you or some course that we found for you, even though it's going to be virtually impossible for the guy in the wheelchair, if you don't do that, we're going to plunge you into poverty. But you met your target, you got a bonus at the end of the week, and you go home to your family. It's mental. I'm going to leave that for a moment. 17 minutes past the hour. Emmanuel Macron is somebody you might have heard of. He's a young, good-looking man who is one of the front runners in the forthcoming French presidential election. Now, he has said today, in fact, he's told the French media that he is being targeted by Russian media and internet attacks from within Russia with the goal of helping his rivals in the French presidential election. This is extraordinary. There are no limits to what Russia will be accused of. But this guy, Emmanuel Macron, is very pro-European Union, very pro-establishment. And he's running for president in France. Now I can't believe this, he's actually accused Russia of interfering in the French election. Now he gave an interview yesterday to Channel 4 News. And in the interview with Channel 4 News, he said, in the event of Brexit, he, as French president, will be very tough on the British government. Emmanuel Macron, have a listen.
No, I can't try, but I do respect people's vote.
Right.
And I'm not sure that a French guy explaining British people what they have to do is the most efficient thing. I do believe that if you organize general election in the coming month, you can have a big debate in order, perhaps, to revert the decision. I do prefer such a solution. What I want to do is, first, if your government decides to organize a Brexit, I will be pretty tough on it, because I think it cannot
be tough on it.
Yes, because we have to preserve the rest of the European Union and not to convey the message that you can decide to leave without any consequence.
So Britain should be punished for its decision?
No, it's not to be punished, but to be consistent with such a decision. You don't get the passport and you don't get access to the single market when you decide to leave.
Yeah.
So it cannot be...
What about the rights of British citizens living in France? I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of British citizens in this country.
The guy doing the interview on the train is deplorable, isn't he? Rather than pick up Macron on the points he made about there should be another referendum after the next general election, and that if the government decides to go ahead with Brexit, he'd be in favour of punishing them. Rather than picking him up on those points, the deplorable interviewer moved on to talk about people living in France and people living in the UK. I was at the old research again today. I found out that £700 million sterling worth of wine flows into Britain from French vineyards every year. That's £700 million. They sell £700 million. It's nearly €1 billion. Well, with the exchange rate being what it is, it's not quite near €1 billion, but it's a lot of money. And in fact, the total value of all French exports to the UK last year was 28 billion and 62 million. 28 billion and 62 million. And that's for Germany, because France and Germany come as a package these days, particularly about the European Union anyway. Germany sells more cars to the UK than to any other country. Nearly 820,000 cars were exported from Germany to the UK last year. 820,000. And half of the 2.5 million cars built in the UK last year were built by German firms like BMW, which runs Mini and Rolls-Royce as well. And an interesting comment was made recently by Matthias Wisman. Now, Matthias Wisman is the chairman of the German Association of the Automotive Industry. And he said, and I predicted this, I said this a year ago, every possible measure must be undertaken to enable the continued free movement of goods and services between the UK and other EU countries. It will be in nobody's interest to make the international flow of goods more expensive by erecting customs barriers between Britain and the European continent. Matthias Wisman. So don't believe these liars, Emmanuel Macron and Merkel and the President of the EU and the Italian Prime Minister and Barroso and all of these liars when they say it's got to be a punitive Brexit. Couldn't happen. Couldn't happen. In a real world, with all of those exports coming into the UK, and the European Union exports far more in here than is exported from here back, there's no way it can be punitive.